So in this video, we're going to show you a lot of tips and tweaks to really fine-tune that unRaid server that we built a couple videos ago. And if you hadn't seen those, definitely check them out. It's a pretty cool little setup. Really easy to do to build your own little home server. Well, first thing you need is a Raspberry. Nope. No, we're not using any type of small little microcomputer because it just won't get the job done. So before we jump into things, if there is some subject you'd like to see covered or have questions about unRaid or something that maybe we just don't cover in the previous videos and this one as well, definitely leave us a comment down below. I'd like to hear what everybody's doing and see what we can help out with their server, because basically everyone will benefit from that. And in this video, there's going to be several different sections, and some of them you may not want or you don't apply to you, but as always, there will be all the chapter marks down below, and you can just jump to whatever your needs are. And while we're at it, we'll just go ahead and do the housekeeping here. I do appreciate all the Patreon subscribers. Definitely helps bring new videos to the channel all the time. Thank you, and maybe you should join. Do all the things, smash all the buttons that YouTube likes, and do the deal, and let's get on with it already. Yeah, you talk too much. So the first thing I do want to cover, which is really a very important thing, is definitely security. So definitely go in and go set that root password and their users, and you can also make you another user. You start out from the GUI, it's really simple, click on users, and you're always going to have the root user that is pre-installed. And you can go in here and you can, if you really want to get fancy, you can drop in little PNG files to give everybody their own little picture and stuff. Definitely go set you a root password. There's pretty much nothing else you need to do in here. Just put in the password, retype it so you know you don't lock yourself out, and you hit change. So give it a second. It is going to restart some services and it will kick you out, which that's a good thing. Hopefully you did type the password in right. And we'll go ahead and hit login, and we're back in business, and we do have a root password set. So typically I would add another user in here and not use the root user, and that way you can lock out different shares, because there's a lot of time different shares and files you're not having to change that often. And if you did want to change them, you could just log in as root at that time. Now you'll notice there's another issue here right off the bat on the main drive GUI, is the flash drive. And if you hover over the little exclamation point, the flash drive is showing that there's a public share set as the flash. And that means you could go in through SMB or whatever and see the contents and change the contents of the flash drive. Typically you don't want to do that. So we're going to go ahead and change that. So you'll click on flash. That's currently set to public. And if you can go ahead and change it to secure or private. And if you're ever wondering, well, what do these mean? You know, I just don't want to guess. If you come to the actual option right here, you'll notice you get the little question mark. And that's typical in unRaid. If you click it, it will pop open kind of a little help thing, which is cool. Instead of having to go dig through a PDF, and it's just right there. And it will explain all the different modes for you. So we'll go ahead and set ours for secure, and we'll go ahead and hit apply. Give it a second. It's going to restart some services again. And we should see on the main that we now have taken care of that message. So this is more of a little cosmetic thing, but I did have some questions on how I did this. I do prefer a pretty dark display just because doing weird things, weird hours, and yeah, we're not going to get into, but go into settings and then go to the display settings. And this is what I did on here. I chose to not show the banner. You can put a little graphic on that banner if you want to, spruce things up. But what I did for the custom text color is I just chose a hex code of BEBE, like you can see here on the screen, and the custom background color of a bunch of zeros. And I am using the Dynamix color theme of black, and that allows this to just kind of be plain, flat, generic black up at the top. Of course, if you want to do some different colors, There's a ton of different HTML hex color converters, and you can go look up exactly the color codes that you want, put them in there. There's no rebooting or anything. You just hit apply and it's there. So it's pretty easy to do. So for the shares, the ever important shares, because this is the whole thing of really putting media on it, right? So to explain a couple things in the GUI here, now do remember I did encrypt my array. And that's what these two locks are. Now, I did not do any type of encryption on the cache or whatever else. I just did those two drives. So what you're going to notice here in the shares is it's going to say some or all files are unencrypted. And then you'll notice that this one is showing all files encrypted. And going back to how I explained things in the first video, is we are using that cache where we just want to write something really fast over to the SSD or NVMe, and then we don't have to wait on the spinning slow hard drives to write all that data out. Well, if you have it not encrypted, well then of course those files are sitting out on that cache drive, and potentially if something did happen to your server, then those files, someone could take and mount that drive and pull those files off. But that's all going to be how you want to set things up. So one thing you do want to pay attention to is whether you want to use the cache or not use the cache. And I'll try to explain some different scenarios that I've run into. So if we take a look at the app data folder, and the app data is very important because that's where all the data is going to live for your Docker containers, which you really want that data to be fast and you want it to be quick. It's going to live all on that SSD. So if we look at app data, and this one's already going to be in your system, it's got a few questions here. What do you want to use? Do you want to use the cache pool for new files and directories? So again, pop down. Hey, what does prefer mean? Well, prefer means it's going to use all the time. It's going to try to keep all the files on that cache drive as much as it can. Now, for some reason, if you just run out of space on that app data share, say you accidentally wrote a bunch of files out there from Frigate or some other NVR and you didn't realize what you did, you don't want to wake up in the morning and you find your system is down because it spilled over. Well, this will allow it to spill over to the array. Now, you can set some for only, and you got no and yes, and some of this, the terminology can sometimes can get backwards. So definitely read the different options on this list and do pay attention to it. So for the app data, I like to do prefer, and just depends on how you want to set things up. I like to kind of have that backup option in case shit happens. So of course now it's going to ask what cache pool. We only have one cache pool, but if you have multiple pools, you could do that. The allocation, that's also based on really for doing erase stuff, so we'll skip that for now. And you can do included disk, but we'll really have a simple system of just the one disk on our cache pool. And then you're down to, hey, what do you want to do for security, right? Do you want to do it and share it in SMB? It's set as public. Maybe I don't want to do it as public. Maybe I don't want it out there. I just want only certain users to have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave mine as public for right now. It's just my little test server, and I want to make it kind of easy for me to go in and go change a bunch of files. But there are multiple ways you can change your files. And if you don't want a particular share in the SMB shares at all, you can just turn export off, or you can put it as hidden. There's tons of things you can do. It's pretty flexible. We'll go ahead and create a new share. Say we'll call it movies. I don't want a lot of rights to say I've got something that's going to be downloading different documentaries, and I don't want that writing to my SSD all the time. So I'm going to set this to use a cache pool of no, and that way it will always write that data. And I like to choose this option because you can have it download to the SSD, and then it will extract over to the array. You've got two devices doing the I/O, and it will move a little quicker. But again, it all points to how many drives and different servers. It just, whatever you want to do. So we'll go ahead and add this share. We'll leave it public as security and hit done. And it's that simple. You can just simply make a new share like that. And you do have the different status lights on the side. Now, if it's telling you that the files are unprotected, there's a good reason for that, because it's telling you that, hey, the drive they're sitting on, or some of the files are sitting on, if it dies, you only have one copy of it. And there's probably no parity because it's sitting on the cache. So you don't want to lose that cache because you could lose that data. So you do want to back that data up, and we will show you how to back that data up to different sources. And just to show you that we added that share, it's there. We got the movie share out there, and we can go ahead and drop anything we want there. Let's just make a new little text file, and we'll just go ahead and call it test. And we know we can write out there to that share. So I'm not going to go through all the settings and just totally bore you, but some of the main settings you do want to do is, for instance, the date and time. You do want to set the date and time on here because you can use the unRaid server as a local NTP server. So for instance, you could point your cameras or whatever, or say Tasmota, and get time straight from your unRaid server. And there's nothing for you to really uninstall. You just got to make sure, if you're doing various VLANs for those, that you do allow NTP to come into your unRaid server to pick up the date and time. Now, one cool feature I do like to use is you can enable the auto start. And what that would mean is that when you would reboot the server, that it would automatically start your array. And it would automatically start up your Docker services as well, depending on which ones you have set as auto start, and same thing that goes for your VMs. That way, if you're away, server reboots, boom, you're good to go. It does restart and all your things start back up. Now, the ever elusive Docker. And there's a lot of good settings under here. You'll notice we can't change all the settings. Now, if you look all the way to the side, now I do have mine zoomed in, I'm trying to help out with some of the mobile users, is you do want to turn on the advanced view. Because if you don't have it turned on, there's a whole lot of stuff missing. So I like to go ahead and turn on my advanced view. But there's one setting that we really need to change, and it's going to protect you from something bad in the future. Trust me. But the problem is you cannot change all of this while Docker is running. So what you'll want to do is say Docker no. I know you're like, whoa, wait, we want Docker. Now it's going to shut down all your Docker containers, but it's going to allow us to change some settings here. Go ahead and hit apply, and boom, you'll notice there's a bunch of more settings here. The Docker image size is defaulted to 20 gigs. And what could happen if you don't map something right in some container, or someone has a screwed up template and it's writing all the logs and everything inside the container, you'll blow out your Docker container, and then Docker will stop running, or the container will just missing, or all your containers will go missing. I've seen it all. So come in here and definitely do yourself a favor and increase this space. I mean, typically we're probably going to run 500 gig, terabyte, whatever on your SSD. And what difference does setting it to 40? You're not going to miss 20 gig. Change it. Hey, if you want to, set it to 50. That's probably more than you need, is 50, but it's really going to future-proof you. Now you'll notice here that it is storing the vdisk location. It's the system folder, and it is the app data folder. So do pay attention that those files are living on your cache. And I'll show you how to check that after we go through some of these settings, and I'll show you how to fix that if they're not. Now, I do like to use the Docker log rotation, and of course, every single setting you can come in here and find the help to it if you don't understand what these settings. Pretty cool. I like that it's just right there. Go ahead and we can enable Docker, but as I said, let's go check to make sure that this is actually living on the cache before we start it back up. So if you come over here and click on main, and then scroll to the right, And you notice a little folder over here for cache. So we'll click on that, and it's going to show you exactly what's stored on that drive. So we notice, yep, it's system, there's Docker, and there's my Docker image. I know it's living on that cache. And also, if I went to shares, and I noticed I do have system set to prefer cache. If your system is not set to prefer cache, and that you do find that when you look at disk 1, and that you would see the data for Docker or system or whatever it might be sitting on your array, that could potentially slow things down. And if you want to move it, it's pretty simple. All you need to do before you start that service up, because you don't want to have that file in use, is go ahead and fix the share. Set it to like yes and prefer, etc. Set it to prefer, and that way it's going to move that file from the array to the cache, if it has enough space. And it's really easy to do. Once you do all that, is just click the move. Click the move, get up, go get you a cup of coffee, drink, cold drink, tea, whatever you do, beer, and come back, and potentially those files will be moved from your array to your cache, and you'll notice a huge difference in speed whenever we start things back up. So we'll go ahead and enable Docker again, and we will hit apply. And I'll make sure and change my size again because I clicked out of it. And even though we did change the size, you'll notice all my containers are still here, and they actually are started up. So, and that directly leads us into, what about Docker container updates? Well, sometimes newer isn't better, but sometimes newer is. We need that security feature. So how do we update things? Well, typically it's not going to automatically update anything. And you're going to have to come down here, go to Docker, schlep on over here and say check for updates. It's going to check through all the versions. You have to wait. And then it'll show you, hey, you do have an update, an update, an update, an update. You can come down here and hit update all. You can just apply each individual update. But you don't want to do this all the time. I mean, we got computers. So let's have unRaid tell us when a new update is out there. So that leads us straight into notifications. If you look in settings and their notifications, there's a bunch of cool stuff in here. And it's probably defaulted all to never check and never send. That's not good. Well, because it doesn't know how to really notify you. It only knows how to notify you through the browser if you log in through the GUI. They have some of the Gmail stuff set up already for you, SMTP. I would probably, if you want to use your Gmail account, don't use your main Gmail account that you count on. Go make you some sort of throwaway one that gets used sometimes, and have that one send you an email to your main Gmail account. But if you don't want to do email, there are a bunch of different ones. And you can actually see one of the cool things here. You can actually have it notify you on Discord. You can make your little Discord server and do your little webhook and have it send you notifications through Discord. Once you do add these notification agents, well, you can come in here and say, hey, check for new updates. Check once a month, a day, whatever. Pretty self-explanatory. And then it pops down and says, well, you just want to do your browser. Well, I want to do email and agents. I want it to notify me all kind of places, right? Same thing for plugin updates. No, we haven't really got to plugins, but we will get there eventually. If I shut up a little bit. You can have it check for updates all the time on plugins. You can have it check for your Docker containers all the time. And also the very important one, array status notifications. You do want to turn that one on, and you do want to make sure all your system notifications, that way if you have a drive that fails or if something fills up and you don't realize it, it'll tell you immediately. So once you go through here, and that way it can just bug the crap out of you, make sure you do apply it. And you can test some of the things and just test it all out and just make sure it notifies you. So down to plugins. What are these plugins? Plugins are pretty cool little just pieces of code that different community people wrote, and it just adds functionality to unRaid. Now there's tons of different plugins. Now you may be thinking, well, let me just go ahead and hit install plugin. And you're like, whoa, I don't know this URL and all this. No. Remember we installed this community applications? Just go on over to the apps tab. It's all right in there, thrown in with all the other Docker containers, and just search for what you want. Now, again, I know the GUI looks messed up, but I have it zoomed in for the mobile users. Let's just search for update. So we'll see the auto update applications, and we'll go ahead and install this one. And I do like to look at some of the date updated and make sure it's not some sort of old plugin that's been deprecated or whatever. Plugins are really small and they should take no time at all to install. And now when we go into the plugins, you'll see that we now have the CA Auto Update application. Now this one is very powerful and it can be good and bad. You can actually have it automatically update plugins without bothering you. So if there's ones that you feel very comfortable with, go ahead and update them. I don't want to deal with it. That's too much trouble. You can go in here and set that for each potential plugin, and you can say, see, there's auto update on and off. And that would be for, say, for the Coral drivers, when we did the Frigate, I have that one set auto update off. And then we do have auto update on of community and then the auto update. And then you got all the different settings in here that you can do of how often you want it to do it. Same thing with the Docker auto update settings, is you can come in here and say, I'm not too concerned, say with Tasmo backup. So I'll go ahead and say turn that one auto update on, but I still want to know when there was a new version. So you can have it send you a notification that, hey, I updated Tasmo backup for you. I definitely would not recommend coming in here and hit update all Docker applications, because it would just automatically update everything all the time for you. And that way you wouldn't have any time to go, hey, do I want that new feature in Home Assistant? Or maybe there's a breaking change and I want to wait. Well, definitely don't do that on all of them. And if you're doing this, make sure you do put the update check frequency, and you can set that however you want to do there. It's a pretty cool feature and very powerful, but it can be very bad at the same time. So do kind of check yourself on this one and think things out. So another good little plugin I like to install is I want to back up all of my Docker container information. So search for backup, and you can notice the one right here on Squid's repository. This is the app data backup restore v2. Again, same thing. It has been updated recently. We're going to use that one. We'll hit install. Now, right off the bat in the plugins itself, you'll see the little shield here. This is going to give you the opportunity to back up all of your Docker containers, VMs, etc. Because potentially you may only have just the one cache drive, and hey, let's put a copy of all of that on the array, or let's put it somewhere else. Maybe we have a different network share that's on something else, say on a Pi or a local computer or whatever it may be, or you can just run this manually, say once a month or something. So do take note, it will stop your Docker applications as well as it will restart them. So for instance, if you're running MQTT on here and it take an hour to back up, your MQTT will be down for that period. So pretty self-explanatory on a lot of these fields. The app data share is, and you don't have to type these in. So I know some of you may not be used to some of the Linux stuff, and that's just fine. Come down here and go, and we're going to pick user, and we're going to pick app data. And if you click out of it, you can see it automatically did mount user app data. It's going to ask you, hey, what destination share you want to put it in. Now think about that, what we just did on the shares. Don't back up your SSD cache drive to the cache drive. Just don't. That's dumb. Make a share. Say it's going to be here, community applications app data backup. I wish I had made it longer, but make sure that is set to no on use cache. While we're in here, before we do that, let's go make that share. So we'll call it CA backup, and we'll leave a comment for ourselves. So we'll say use cache pool, no. We'll leave everything else the same. We don't want to use the cache, but it's not, so it's going to gray all that stuff out. And we'll go ahead and hit add share. And since we didn't save it, we'll need to put this back in here. The destination, if you go ahead and click in here, is if you just click on user, and now that's going to have CA backup. Excluded folders, very important. If you have something like, say for instance, Plex that likes to make so many different files, you could exclude that if you want. If you had something very large that you didn't need backed up, you could exclude that as well. Pretty self-explanatory. Use compression. Yeah, we'll use compression. Yeah, we do want to verify it. And I see a note here showing that the USB is deprecated as well. I'll show you a manual way you can back up the USB, or you can use that unRaid net plugin. I haven't messed with that one yet. So we hit apply, and all files within, including, will be overwritten during the backup process. Yep, it's blank. And we will hit OK. And then we have the option, we can hit backup now. If we want to go over here, you'll notice that, hey, we got a notification on the browser. We'll jump over to the status. We don't have much on here, so it didn't take long to back up, and now it's verifying it. And it will automatically go back and start up our Docker containers for us. So pretty cool, and that's how you back up your app data. Very important feature, scheduler. What do you want to schedule in unRaid, right? We did all that stuff. No, there's another cool feature you need. And it's probably not something that you really think is all snazzy and that great. Schedule parity check. What that's going to do, and no, it does not shut down the server. It does not shut down your containers. It does not shut down your VMs. But potentially, depending on your system, it could flood the disk with a lot of I/O, and you would compete for that, and it may impact the performance of some applications. Now, there's a lot of debates on this you'll find on Reddit and different forums. Some people like to do it monthly. Some people like to do it some sort of custom schedule of, say, they do it quarterly. It could potentially take all day, could 2 days, depending on your drive speeds, etc. What it's going to do is going to go through, it's going to test the parity drive or drives against all your data disk, and it's going to make sure the parity is still valid. It's going to also, it may potentially throw some disk errors because it's reading every single sector of every single disk, and smart errors could crop up at that time. So it's not a bad thing to do because, hey, if you get a disk that comes up showing it has some sector errors for some reason, you should probably change that disk. And then you should thank the parity check for telling you about it. Keep that in mind, and maybe you want to do your parities manually because you want to put some sort of fan or other cooling option. Maybe you want to set the air conditioner down a little lower. Hey, maybe you could get Home Assistant to do that. Now there's another one out here. It's called Mover. Well, what is Mover? We talked about Mover a little bit. That's going to move that data from that cache over to your array, and now it's somewhat more protected because it's split across disk plus the parity. So I do like to have Mover set up on a daily basis. You can change it as you like. Now, if that file is open, Mover will not touch it if that file is open. So again, that's like those files that, say for instance, a VM. If you forgot to put the VM right and it got moved out to the array, you would need to shut down that VM before Mover could move it. Pretty simple settings. Hit apply and you're done and good to go. Don't forget to do your scheduler. Very important stuff in there. So that's it for this one. We're going to cover a bunch of the cool little tips and tweaks and things that we do and to make things run unRaid and just make it run perfect and not really need a whole lot of maintenance. So if we missed something, forgot something, whatever, shoot us a comment down below, or maybe we're doing something wrong. You can definitely roast us down below and definitely hit like, dislike, whatever it may be. And y'all take care.